Hey guys, the guys from Lowfield Motorsports asked me to do a bit of a track guide for Brands Hatch for their license test that everybody has to do signing up to the platform. The target is to do 6 or 7 consecutive laps within 105% margin of a benchmark time. I think in the end you have to do 126.6 on average. And the fastest time that I managed here in a couple laps is a 22.8. So you're aiming to be something like 4 seconds off the pace, which should be easy if you just follow a few tips from this guide here. All right, so let's switch over to the game. I'll play the full replay at the end of the video. So if you're hyper impatient, just skip to the end of the video. But for the sake of analysis, we'll just go right in for the first corner here and have a bit of a look of what I'm doing to get through this corner. So first thing you should notice is, and we'll back this up with the data right away. And let's move into the first corner here and take a look at that. Is you can see I'm never really 100% braking. The reason for that is the front tire is already having to do something here because we're already rotating the car into that corner, which means there isn't so much grip left on the tires. So you can't just simply ask 100% braking and expect the car to just work with it. Of course, the ABS is kind of helping you, but just think of there being a limited amount of grip, and you can either use that for turning or braking or any combination in between that is, so to say, maxing out on the tire. So if you're just turning a tiny bit already, make sure to give that up on the brake to allow the car to really put that tire into the ground nicely there. The other bit is just looking at the cockpit here. You can see we're coming up that hill. And then we're going over a bit of a crest, which means the car becomes light. It can't put too much force into the ground, so you have to be even more careful with the braking. The rear end usually becomes light a bit going into this corner, because while turning and braking, the rear goes up into the air, loses a bit of grip. So we just want to be really cautious here and letting go of the brake progressively as we approach the corner, settling the rear once we go downhill to really have stability when we fall off that drop here. The other very important bit here is it's very hard to orientate yourself to where that corner really is. And first idea really is to stay outside for a bit longer until you really see that. And then I think better perceivable here is where the car is the tightest in the corner, what we call the apex, right? So if you just take the corner and put it in half, it's somewhere here or so. Let me draw a line there real quick. This is like the middle of the corner, but you can see I'm the tightest line-wise a bit after that middle of the corner. And this is really a notion you want to keep in your head. What you want to do in this corner is to have a slightly delayed apex coming down that hill, because, and I'll explain that in a second. So we're waiting here until we really come to the inside. Those pillars are a really great marker for where you want to be the most inside. The reason being, when the car's already done a fair bit of turning, then you can put the power down more aggressively because you don't have to do so much rotation on exit anymore. The other thing is falling off this hill here, the front tires really don't have any grip. And the next problem that you get is understeering towards the outside of the track here. Now you're falling into this ditch here, which means the front is very likely to bottom out, which gives you even more understeer, and suddenly you run wide into the sandbox. So for all these things, you're trying to put the apex a tiny bit later, like shown in, well, somewhere there, right? So slightly after the middle of the corner is where you want to be the tightest. From there, be full throttle. And from there, it also should be enough to stay within the track limits, which is the next point I need to bring up, because the track limits on Brands Hatch aren't really the white line. The rule normally is 2 tires have to stay within the white lines. On Brands Hatch, there is a white line, but it's not the line they mean. There is an actual somewhere a different line that defines the track limit, so you really can go wider here and the lap will remain valid. Then going for the next corner, let's go a bit faster here. Braking marker is somewhat this bridge or the shadow of it, or the shadow touching the front of your nose or your view here. So it's just a reference to really look at, not the actual braking point, okay? The other bit we're going to see for this corner is, and it's very similar to the first turn, if we zoom in here into the data, we can see initial hard braking. This is while we're going still up the hill. But as soon as we start turning in, you'll see me having a huge drop off in the brake here. And the reason is if we can't see the corner, right? This is because there's a crest before then. When the car goes over this crest, slow it down a bit, the front end becomes really light, and we have to allow the front tires to keep that grip. And if you brake very harshly over this crest, you're likely triggering the ABS, likely getting stuck in understeer, going very deep into the corner. So all you have to do really is respect the elevation of the track and what it's doing to the car. So when you're kind of jumping without actually losing touch to the ground, you're still losing grip. So you want to reflect that in how much you're asking from the front tire, according to what is really available when the car becomes light there for a short amount of time. The other interesting bit in this corner is there's certainly different lines, but I think what I want to point out again is I'm putting the apex somewhere really late into this corner here, right? So just when I'm already on power and start to rotate the car with a lot of, asking from the engine, spinning up the rear tires almost a tiny bit until the traction control kicks in. But then I'm still getting tighter. So my tightest point in the corner really is on the exit, and I'm always delaying coming to the inside here fair bit after the middle of the corner. There's certainly a way to do a double apex, so to be tight here, run a bit wide to here, come back to the inside, but I feel there isn't too much grip on the outside in this corner, so I'm kind of hugging it tight all the way, but the tightest very late in the corner for one single late apex here, to be able to have a straight car when I really want to turn engine power into speed on the exit here. That's where I'm the tightest here now. This is the tightest point in the corner. Then accelerating away, being able to open up the steering wheel, which allows the car to really build speed when you're not having to rotate the car as aggressively on corner exit here anymore. Then got a bit squiggly here because I was still turning a lot while coming off that curb there, so the rear stepped out a bit. But on the other hand, it really helped me get the car across to the other side here, which is the next important thing I really want to point out to you. This aggressive swing here after the corner is important to get the car already parallel for when you have to start the next braking. This is really crucial, because if you're lazy between those two corners, it means that I'm exaggerating here, but it means you're pointing away from the corner by the time you reach the outside position on the curb there, which means you have to do a lot of rotation in the braking zone, which means you're still coming ever closer to the outside curb, which means you have to shift your attention or half an eye. I lost my mouse. Shift half an eye to not clipping the curb and the grass here with the right side of the car, which means you have no time to focus on where the apex is. And bringing the car parallel much earlier means you are able to shift your focus to where the apex is, where you eventually want to be much earlier, and you don't have to worry about clipping the grass on the right there. That's the important bit. The other thing that we'll see in this corner is, and I'll just have to reset the zoom here real quick, is again the braking, because we're always rotating the car throughout this braking zone. Again, you just have to reflect that in your braking. If you're turning on the wheel, you can't brake 100%, so be easy on the brake there. Have quite a fair bit of trail braking deep into the corner. I'm leaving myself some extra speed there, then braking a tiny bit more once I really come for the corner, make a final adjustment, just force the nose into the ground a tiny bit, make it grip up, go for the corner. Next thing you want to really take care about is, while there's a curb on the inside, it is really, really bumpy if you just take a tiny bit too much. So make sure you're really only using a tiny bit of that curb as soon as you come to the end of the curb here and kind of touch the grass there a tiny bit. It's going to be really bumpy. It's going to put you wide out the corner. The rear is going to snap. Horrible experience. So really make sure just use a tiny bit of that curb and not clip the inside grass there. And then one of those corners, I'm accelerating really early, but the thing is, the track limits again here are in a very different place than you would normally see. This is all valid. So the white line is more of an imaginary one. This is somewhere here at the edge of that curb and the other side of where it's actually painted. The other thing you can see is there's somewhat cobblestone below the grass hidden here, which allows you to, just use the track, gives the car support just about enough to drive there. It's a bit slippery, so you want to be straight almost, or at least not ask a lot of rotation, but you can use that and it's going to be valid, allowing you to put the power down a lot earlier. The next corner then, actually, let me show you the wheel as well. Braking point really hard to find here, but I find, and if we go there, you'll notice there's a small crest, and then afterwards we're falling into somewhat of a ditch, and this is like my braking reference, going over the small crest visible here, and then there you go. This is the braking point where we're just falling into this. You'll see afterwards when I show the lap in full. The other bit in this corner is, and again, I'd say this is much better perceived looking at the data, is where you want to place the car. And you can really see I'm trying to keep the car on the outside for a long period of time. There's even a bit of rolling in between. And the apex here is really late in that corner, again, for various reasons. One being there's a straight ahead. We want to carry a lot of speed. We want to sacrifice a bit of corner speed to have a better straight. And if you're 2-3 kilometers up on the straight, you're easily gaining time for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds, how much you're spending on this right there. The other bit is Brands Hatch in general is a rather low grip track. And if you force the car to rotate under heavy acceleration, the traction control is going to cut everything away and you will not actually accelerate, right? So you're asking for power and the electronics say no, basically. And the more straight the car is, the less rotation you have to do on power, the less traction control you're going to have, the more speed you're going to build. So with that in mind, see where I'm trying to place the car here, staying wide for a long amount of time, letting the car slowly come more to the inside. And then the most inside part here is really where I'm already on the throttle. Next problem is the road is really not bumpy, but wavy in a way. And you want to also respect those waves. Once you go over them, the amount of grip the car has is going to change, and this is reflected in me lifting on the throttle here one more time, and also seen in the data here. Initially, full throttle causes the differential to lock, the car become a bit stable, the turbochargers to start spinning, the power going to be deployed, but then I'm coming over the small wave there in the circuit, or whatever you want to call it. I just have to take it easy with the car there, else I might experience the rear snapping and losing more time than needed. Then going away, actually, let's go forward a bit here. The exit, one of those curbs that just becomes narrow, so yeah, you kind of can't use the curb at all. And then we're going for this really fast right-hander here, which is a really tricky corner. We're doing 230 to 40 on the braking point here, which means aerodynamics are going to be the dominant factor in everything that's happening next. And if you hit the brakes very hard in high downforce situations, the rear end will get loose because the front suddenly produces a huge amount of downforce the rear can't cope with. Which means in the end, looking at the data, zooming out, zooming back in on the right point, of course this will be more neat in the future. I never have full braking here because it would overwhelm the car. So I brake hard initially, and then I have to do a lot of trail braking, the rear end getting really loose here. You can see the counter steer happening here even in that zone. And once the counter steer is sorted, I feel the confidence to go back into the brake, again, get the nose closer to the ground, generating the downforce there. And then slowly committing to the steering angle throughout the corner here. So just remind yourself, high downforce situation, be careful with the brakes because the car is very sensitive to ride height changes. So don't just slam the brakes like a maniac. Just be cautious with the car and it's gonna thank you. Next thing is there's a curb on the inside and you just wanna use that a tiny bit, but not too much. Then it gets really rumbly, likely going to upset the car, putting you wide, causing over understeer, all sorts of issues. So just go next to that curb, but don't actually use it, or just a tiny bit, but really cautious there. And the next thing in this corner is there is a curb on the exit, but you can't use it because by the time you would want to use the curb, it's, yeah, kind of going from a wide curb to, well, whatever small strip of thing that is. A couple old Marlboro cigarette boxes hidden there or whatever. But yeah, this is a big issue. So if you're wide on the curb and you go through the grass here, you're likely going to lose tire pressure, potentially bottom out, lose time from that. But yeah, the next couple laps already with lower pressure might be an issue. So just be aware the curb is narrowing and you want to be off that curb as soon as you can, really. Then the next corner, and also track limits will be the crucial thing here. That was just a braking marker on the left there, hiding, again, more of a visual reference than the actual braking point. You can see I'm already braking before that. But the crucial thing in this corner here really is, and we're gonna just look at it in more detail again, how much I'm really cutting on the inside and how much I'm using on the exit. That's the main focus here. So yep, that's going to be all 4 tires off or behind the white line, but it's still valid because, again, you can, I think this is a good view to actually show this. Go forward. This is how much we can use because the track limit is somewhere at the other side of the curb there. So we can really go across that quite extremely. And the same then is true for the exit here, where we're just, again, going very close to the edge of the curb there, which is the actual track limit. And as soon as 2 tires are within that, you're fine. On the exit, we again have those cobblestones we already know from turn 3. And this is going to stay here with us even after the curb ends, so you can really stay wide here for quite a long time. Looking at the braking for this one, initial hard braking, but then there's a long phase of really low trail braking because, again, rather high speed, 180 kilometers initially here, now, well, starting to 200 something even, and while you go for the corner, we're still carrying 150, 160, which is enough for downforce, again, to be the dominant part. And you just have to be cautious on your brake there, what you're doing with the car and how you're changing the aerodynamics while you're driving. And therefore, you want to be really subtle on the brake with your inputs, which is going to make your life a lot easier going over this, well, curb there. I'll just go to that view again. Just a tiny thing here. You can get carried away here really in this situation to take the shortest line here, but the shortest line is going to cause issues because you have no time afterwards to get the car straightened up for the braking zone. So my line is always going to be around the outside here, and then I'll already be straight once I have to hit the brake, which means, again, let me roll it forward, that I don't have to worry about hitting the left side grass under braking because my car is not traveling towards the edge of the track anymore. So there you go, right? So I'm taking this wide swing to have the car almost straight, parallel with the white line on the left. And then my focus again here can shift into finding the invisible curb or apex on the inside there. And if you have to shift focus because you haven't done the line that I just said, but you have taken a tighter line and still have to manage not clipping the grass on the left here, you're focusing for a really long time onto making sure to not clip the grass here. And by the time you are sure, there's no time left whatsoever to find this all-important point on the right there. So yeah, taking this wide line there, you're not going to lose any time. You're just freeing up space in your head to focus on what is important. And this is, where is my corner, not how do I not die? Okay. So make your life easier. Take the wide swing there. Bring the car straight in parallel with the white line. Makes your life a whole lot easier. And then find the braking marker here, which is more difficult than I thought. But it is, when you fly along here, you see the edge or the corner in the track is really just stopping here. And right after where the corner stops, this is where you want to start the braking somewhat. So there is a marker somewhat. It's not that easy to see though. So yeah, check for when the curvature in the track stops. When it becomes straight again, then this is your braking marker somewhat. And this is also for where you want to be almost parallel with the white line there. So lots of things fall into place like that. Then coming into this corner, again, want to just show you the steering wheel here as well. Trying to follow the tracks here painted into the tarmac really helps finding that corner. But then you want to make sure, yeah, being just right off that, because the black line really avoids the curb there a bit, and you can cut again a lot more of that, probably even more than I did here. The other important bit is, and you can already see that in the data here, that I'm using throttle even before hitting that curb. So let me quickly bring our attention to that here as well. The important thing here is the car is going to become really light over that crest, and you want to have extra ground clearance. So being in the throttle is really important to bring the nose up, to lock the rear differential, which gives the car a lot of stability. And then, because you will never hit this car or this corner the same twice, because it's kind of blind. And you always have to adapt on the exit. And the other tricky bit here really is there isn't a straight afterwards, but the corner just keeps going and going. So it deceives you into thinking, well, I managed this nicely, and suddenly you're running out of track just very late here because there's another tiny bit of curvature coming afterwards. So your corner isn't actually this here, but your corner is everything up until here, I'd say, is what I just paint. Let's ignore that. But you get the idea, hopefully. And then afterwards, we can already see that here. Very little time to position the car for the next corner. So we have to be aggressive, bringing the car over to the right side. You'll see in the replay better, I guess. I slowed down a bit, right? The car just about stays on track here. And now I have very little time. I can already see the braking point there. And I'm swinging over to the right, swinging to the left, just bringing the car back in a straight line before I apply the brakes. And it's really short amount of time that I have available to do that. But it's really, really crucial, because as soon as you're straight, you can focus again on where the corner is, and you're not occupied with not dying here with clipping the grass, but you can focus on what is important, which is where is my apex in that corner. Then rolling in more forward, one more information to give for that corner. The curb here, again, really weirdly shaped. It's very narrow at the beginning. In the middle, it's rather wide, but then suddenly becomes narrow again, giving you a really hard time and causing issues. So yeah, just be aware of what is happening to the track around you and where it's giving you space and where it's taking it from you. The other interesting bit is, and you can see that the track falls off into this corner, and the middle of the corner is kind of the lowest point in the section, which again means you're running the risk of driving the splitter into the ground. So similar to corners that we had before, already in this corner, you want to make sure you're pretty early back on power, which lifts the nose back up, which gives you extra ground clearance on the front and sorts a lot of issues in keeping the car smooth and stable through this corner here. Because it's banked, because you're turning in so early here, again, trail braking is a key in every corner. So it's almost not necessary to repeat that. You always want to have trail braking for the majority of your braking zones in general, forever and always, unless there's an exception, which is always there. Back to the car here, and back to my camera of choice. On the exit here, same thing. The curb is really wide, becomes narrow, becomes even more narrow. So you, again, just want to be mindful about that. Keep the car on the track here, so you have much less runoff than it initially appears. Rumbling across the grass, they're most likely going to cost you tire pressure, going to cost you time, and we don't want that. So yeah, the track is really narrow, and the curbs only make matters worse here, deceiving you into thinking there's more track available when there isn't. Then coming for the last corner, really braking point just about that board, which doesn't really have a number, so we're 1/ away from the next corner. Don't ask me, but that's somewhat of the braking point. And then we just again want to be mindful about how the elevation in the track surface really is shaped, because it has to be reflected in your braking. So you're coming down a hill a bit, it immediately goes up into the braking zone. There's a bit of a crest, a bit of a banking starting, a lot of things happening to the car there, and you just have to be easy on the brakes and just allow the car to really work with the surface underneath. And then this is one of the few corners where, if we look from above, or even better, look at the data zooming in onto the last corner here, we can see this is one of the few corners where the apex, I would say, is rather early. So you're not really keeping it tight for the exit there. the exit somewhat where you'll find the cones here, or a different reference could be where the curb here really is the narrowest, right? So yeah, starting with a wide curb there, gets a bit narrow, but it gets even narrower just when the poles start here. And this is really where you want to be the most inside, opening up that exit. Additionally, the corner itself gets a wider radius here, so you can carry ever more speed while remaining in the same place on the track. We're looking at the wrong corner here. We're looking at this one. I'm sorry. So that's why I meant the apex is really early here, right? If you look at the corner as a whole, you can see the apex is rather early here. Again, trail braking to this zone. Then you're coming over a crest where I just coast the car a bit, not trying to upset it too much, not adding something on the brake because there's no grip in the front, not already trying to force the rear around with throttle, just waiting there. In between, I'm losing, what am I losing here? Something like 3-4 kilometers just by doing nothing, maybe 5. Then going back into the power, and again, the corner is somewhat opening, but it's also easily deceiving you into being too aggressive. And the exit there, while it does have a curb on the exit, it's again narrowing towards the end, and when you really need it, there's no curb whatsoever, just grass. So more important here to just give yourself a meter extra or 2 on the left side to really make sure you're staying on the track. You're not going to lose loads of time there, especially when thinking of the license we have in mind, which allows you to go a lot slower than the pros, right? So rather stay on the track, make sure you figure out 6-7 laps in a row that are clean instead of trying to beat the world record here, right? Yeah, and then this lap is already done. So I'll roll it back, shut up, and give you the full lap as a whole. And I thank you all for watching this. Hope you pass your license test, and we'll see you in an official race very soon. Bye.